Hi everybody joining in. Welcome to DesignWorks. DesignWorks is a unique design platform engaging architects, designers and consultants from Asia. All across the number of years that we have been working, we have been evolved from architectural events to now architectural live sessions through a design feed. In 2020, when the lockdown happened, DesignWorks became even more prominent, bringing new designs and new interactive activities for the audience, inviting you to share your design story every day. Introducing myself, I am architect Himani Ahuja. I am an architectural journalist and a communications specialist. I'm also the co-founder of One Digital and DesignWorks Asia. Insta 40, what we are here for, is a very Insta creative series turning the tables to hear from who we call storytellers. And today we have a really special guest with us for our opening session, the very renowned, the very loved and extremely intellectual editor-in-chief, architect Suneet Paul from A plus D, which is Architecture Plus Design. The magazine, I'm sure, has been a Bible for all the design lovers. Let me call him. Hi, sir. Welcome to DesignWorks.
Thank you for this wonderful sort of an interaction organized. I mean, it's quite nice that another chat which we have, which is informal, nice to talk, to chirp, and to discuss and to inform each other. So a very good afternoon to the audience also.
Very good afternoon, sir. Very good afternoon to everybody who's here to hear from you, from the storyteller of our own Bible. Let's know about your story. How did you get into being an editor of such a renowned magazine? How did you build it up? You were an architect, so how did it totally evolve?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's an interesting. Everybody has a story to tell, and with me, it's always been actually. I mean, following the gut. To be very honest, you see, I've always gone by intuition and by the first sort of a feel, a pulse, and that's why no regrets so far. But to come back to how I became entangled and passionately involved with this magazine. And that was once upon a time, actually, 24 years, 96. So that's been quite some time. And to be with an organization, that itself is a big kind of an achievement, I think, for myself also. Knowing, that every now and then you have the blood pressure rising here and there, but kept it under control. And coming back to the question which you had, getting involved with the magazine. Well, I think it also goes back coming from a family of creative writers. That the sense of writing has always been there with me, apart from architecture. So, and also exploring. You see, coming back from very quickly to tell you the history. Coming back from Nairobi, I was a tiny tot at that time, and so my parents had the gypsy urges in them. So we traveled quite a bit, and I think that's where I also got the feel to explore, and that is so important, I realize, in architecture for everybody, So I was prior to sort of joining the magazine, I was teaching in the School of Planning. I had practiced, but I was writing quite a bit. And I think that's how one thing led to another. And one fine day, the publishers of that day, sort of just gave me a call and said, "We want you desperately." And that is what it was. And but I was in two minds, as usual. I was taken aback, no, not expecting it to happen, but a couple of days thought, talking, discussing, and then just took an impulsive decision, and one thing led to another. And so that's how my involvement with the magazine, it started off, and no regrets for that, I must say. Yeah.
Great. I've also heard that you are a hidden painter. How did you develop the interest for painting?
Oh, well, you see, I mean, painting just, being you need outlets, mediums, and you want to experiment also. And as I said, over a period of time, it's been very interesting when you sort of exploring, getting exposed to different cultures, and meeting people from different orientations, whether it is in India or abroad. We're living in a global sort of a scenario now. But so this is a recent kind of a happening, just delving into like a hobby. In fact, the painting which you see, I don't know if you can see it. That is one of my paintings, which is just, by the way, we're painting for the fun of it, So that's how painting came. That's how writing came. In fact, creative writing also, just as a hobby,
Right. And especially in the years when you started, I did not see much of architectural journalism happening back then, right? And it was a new field like it is even now. So what do you have to say about, people pursuing architecture journalism and, getting into writing, getting into the main concept of, getting into journalism?
Oh, well, architectural journalism, in fact, at that particular time when I had sort of joined, was totally in infancy. In fact, A+E, one of the first ones, in fact, in architecture. It started in '84, and this was one of the few. In fact, the one which was another one which was there, Architect Builder, that also had come up at the time. That no longer is, unfortunately, now. I recently heard that it had shut off or something like that. But anyway, at that, I still remember when I joined at that time. I mean, the high technology that we have nowadays, when you're printing, you have all the best of the softwares to do it and the productions. But at that time, I was amazed myself when I got exposed for the first few months that everybody used to sit down and on pieces of paper. We actually used to put down these drawings and these photographs and the write-ups. So that was an experience of its own kind. And look at it, what we are today. But that's evolution of time, and I think everybody has grown with the evolution. And the profession also, journalism. That was the aspect of coming. But journalism, I feel, unfortunately, still, it was at its infancy. We have gone more towards what you call as architectural media taking over, but journalism per se, lacking somewhere. When we talk about architecture, for example, in the newspapers, it's always talking about decor. It's talking about, I hardly come across anybody really writing in newspapers, and that's where the lacuna lies in our society, actually. That we have not been able to carry the community with us. Very unlike what happens outside, So we need that passion, and for that, I mean, I think the new generation coming in now, I feel that they have that, but then you have to have that passion, You have to have that urge, to dirty your hands also, because there is a glamour. But behind that glamour, there is a lot of hard work also, which goes in. Exactly. So, and that goes for architecture in totality. It's not only for journalism, but it goes for architecture also. The glitz and glamour, we see good buildings, worked out buildings, but a lot of hard work behind there also,
Right. So what about, are there any prerequisites that, somebody needs to have if they want to start in architectural journalism? Because I see not just students, but even professionals who have done architecture, they want to sit down and write now. So what do you have to say about the prerequisites?
Well, I would say the first thing that is required is that passion, which is required. Without a passion, I don't think anything can take place. That's the basic foundation. And the second, with the passion, but only passion is not going to take us anywhere. With the passion, you also have to have a focus and
Right.
have to know yourself. You have to know exactly, not be carried away. That journalism, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Because you see, we are quite right along all over. You see, we have been having strict standards as such that it's professionals who do understand the language of architecture who are going to be contributing to the magazine. It's not that you just graduated, and you say, I am an architect and I have a fondness for journalism of writing, and you can start contributing. I think it's so important to first discover your skills, what your skills are in journalism, in writing first of all, and that is you need a vocabulary. You need to keep your eyes and ears open, and the most important aspect is use the pen and pencil to write. Instead of, the experiment along with the language of lines, you also have to use the vocabulary of words, which is fantastic, and discover your vocabulary. You see, that is what it is. Discover yourself first, get your focus right, and then I think doors open up.
Right. Talking about pen and paper, like you mentioned, I want to know from you, how has the architectural media evolved? Like, we were talking about writing in a newspaper, then we came on to, developing a magazine, then we, came from print to online now. Architecture plus design also is online now. So what do you have to talk about the evolution?
No, I think it's a wonderful tool. The online is something where we have discovered it as a magazine, Architecture Plus Design. We were always sort of laid back, to be very honest, and did not really delve into it, looking at the aspects of the diversity that online can bring in. But now, in this unfortunate lockdown, it was fortunate that we were able to sort of put our heads down. And we have a website now, which we're talking about. We have some other Insta platforms, which we are looking at, and they are sort of getting a good response. And I think whether it's a magazine, print, but I also believe at the same time, online is going to catch up. But the print can never, ever fade away. And more so in architecture, to hold a magazine in your hand, to see those pictures, good or bad, to read also from there. I think that experience is a different one than when you're on your laptop and you're seeing a building somehow, at least to me. Maybe I'm an old timer, but I have talked to a lot of people, and everybody agrees,
Yeah.
So the print has its own value. The online is there to stay.
Right. It's like I said, it's the same way about reading a book. Reading a book through those papers and smelling those papers, that's a different feeling than, reading it on Kindle, right? So that's the transformation that we are talking about. So if there's one thing that you could change about architectural media, what would that be?
One thing, well, I would actually really want people to be more contributory. As architects also, I have a lot of friends here and there, and I share this, what I'm sharing with you, that architects, the diversity of Indian architecture is so much. It's such a large world, a country. And there is so much of architecture, and there is room for everybody, whether we talk about vernacular, whether we talk global, whether we talk modern, or the regional styles that are there. But unfortunately, we are not able to document that and to bring it forward vocally and with a confidence. And that is where I feel that architects, they and the media that is there should sort of combine together is to make a dent in society also. Because you see, if we come forward as professionals, as architects, we talk about it with confidence. You see, whether any slant you have, that would go a long way in educating our society and for a better habitat also. Because a more educated society is going to be more demanding. They are not going to be looking at the cosmetics. They are not going to be wanting the cosmetics. They are going to be asking for the nitty-gritty then. You see, so we have to force them in a way. The media has to force them to sort of ask for the nitty-gritty for society, for betterment of habitat.
Right. I completely agree with you. Okay, now since we are talking about content, I want to know from you that you as an editor and your team, the associate team, how do you kind of select the kind of material going in A+D or a magazine every month? Because I'm sure that you get a pool of content. So how do you understand that which content has to be selected and which content should go forward?
You see, I mean, if you have been a follower of the magazine, you would know that over a period of time, once upon a time, it was very India oriented. You see, I mean, most of the architecture that was sort of displayed, published, was sort of talking in the Indian horizon per se. But gradually, I think over a period of time, we sort of rationalized, and to be very honest, in those days, it was very difficult to sort of even afford the photographers, the international photographers, for the magazine, because sustenance is another aspect of for any publication, and we could never ever afford the high costs at that time. But over a period of time, I think the magazine has evolved just as architecture is evolving with time. The magazine also has just flowed with the architecture. So evolution took place when globalization came to India in a big way. You see, the magazine also got that impetus, the thrust, and we started getting a lot of publication material, international. India was sort of a center to be looked at by architects, looking at. So there was a lot of material that we were getting for free, in fact. We were paid after, I think it's about a decade. To be very honest, we were paid any photographer. International I'm talking about, earlier. So since that time, the globalization, so I think the magazine also sort of, if you see the content that we have, it is normally theme-based, but there is a diversification just as architecture is so diverse. You cannot really say that we are going to talk only sustainability, or we're going to talk about modern architecture, or we're going to talk about a particular typology, because if you understand architecture, the umbrella is so beautifully vast. There is art, there is dance also at times, which we have covered up here and there, but in a different form. There is landscape, there is, all the services, allied professional professions, I think we have tried to keep them going side by side, so that it's more of a holistic approach that the magazine gets, and that is how I think I must thank the fraternity of architects, in fact, who have all along been encouraging us, supporting us, because I believe no matter what you do, the support comes, and we have a very sharp audience of architects since we are a and we get brickbats from them the moment we sort of deviate here and there. There are purists in the profession, let me be practical, who don't want any sort of change here and there. But so I think that balance has come to sustain yourself within the professional, but the most important aspect has been that we have tried to maintain the focus on architecture and not dilute it, just let it sprout on its own, the true spirit of architecture and its new avatars that are there, So I think this is the relation.
Right. So a lot of people, ask me that why is architectural writing so important? We go ahead, we build our forms. So, but I have heard and I believe that communication is how, really influences how the infrastructure of a built form develops. So what do you have to say to them? And please answer this question for me, that why architectural writing is so important.
I think, you may be the best of the sort of an architect, but if you cannot express yourself, to be honest, and this is what I have observed over a period of time, it's like when you go outside, there may be a very ordinary kind of a zoo. Very ordinary. Zoo, you go to any zoo or something like that, but the presentation is extraordinary. Totally. I mean, it floors you. And it may be just be a small little butterflies, but the way they are put across and talked about through the language of the different elements which are put. I think it's a similar kind of a thing. You may have the best of the architecture, but if you can't sort of talk about it, and you don't document it well, documentation in architecture, I think, is the most important, which I, during my training also in college, I didn't bother at that time, like everybody, at that particular stage, we don't bother and we take it easy, taken for granted, and we say, oh, what is this, it's not really important, it's the drawing, it's the design that is going to speak. We are victims of that. But I think in today's competitive world, the best of architects have learned this lesson, that we need a good documentation. And when I say a good documentation, to express what they have wanted to achieve in their design. That is the fundamental. You see, I mean, if you can't, you may be doing so much functionality wise, but if you can't really put it across, it may show in the drawings. But I think the language of words is also equally important now, really, to communicate, your thought.
Right. I agree. Okay, so talking about going digital, a lot of people have told me that print media is going to die, and everybody is going to go digital, as nobody can go out after the pandemic, or even after this, everything is going to be digital. What is your take on it? Do you really see that print media is going to die, and it's only going to be digital media which is going to be the future of Indian architecture, or global architecture magazines and publications?
No, I think the print, as I said earlier, the print can never ever sort of really die. But this time that everybody has got now, you see, I mean, I look at the webinars, etc., etc. The voices that have come out, I never sort of knew there were so many people who had such strong voices. I mean, such strong thoughts also, beliefs, which they are now coming up, but never used to bother, to sort of. But now, so this is a forum that everybody gets a chance to express online when it comes to conversing and debating, and talking about serious subjects also, and otherwise also, because architecture is an amalgamation of so many. It's so many issues. It's just not the seriousness, but it's also a debate. And it's in today's world, I think, without a debate, you see, I mean, we can never ever evolve further. So the online is there to stay, definitely, to debate. The online is also, because you see, architecture and especially the media, the journalism, and all these magazines, they rely heavily on the industry also. So the rapport between the industry and the professional, I think that's got stronger now. You see, earlier it was only that they are sponsors. You're going to the industry, but I have seen now that the industry players themselves. There's so many CEOs, managers of the industry companies who are coming forward and very genuinely talking, which I never knew that they were thinking on those lines, and also what they think about the profession. That's another aspect. Those boundaries are being broken. And that is a very good aspect, I find. The boundary between the professional architect or a landscape architect or the industry player, who is there, those are being broken. Until the time you break boundaries, you really can't evolve. It's impossible. We'll be cocooned, otherwise wearing blinkers like the horses, and we'll just go on galloping on our own,
Right. So, coming on this thought, I had a discussion with a couple of people from the industry, and there are three things that came to me, which was that how is a content decided? Is it, the content that works when we are submitting anything? Is it the photography which has to be really professional that works, or is it the name and the brand value of the firm that works for a magazine when they're picking certain sense of a case project to publish?
You see, as I said, the diversity, at least this magazine, since it was a journal when it was evolved, it was called a journal. It still is a journal of architecture. But if it be a journal or not, I think the focus essentially, I mean, of course, a brand name of an architect, if you want to say a brand name for an architect, which I don't somehow like talking about that, but there are brand names. Let's be practical in today's world. There's X, Y, Z. But because we have been fortunate having the focus right from day one to be more of a journal and looking at the serious knowledge sort of platform, whether it is there. And so we were getting that kind of a response, not only from the known architects who have made a mark, significant mark, nationally and internationally, but also from the small timers. So for us, when we really are looking at it, that let's say we're taking up a residential main theme issue or sustainability or something. And as I said, the country and now the global happenings, and now with online, the repertoire that we can have with architects, it no longer is that you only have to go to a person. But I still feel that it is so important to acknowledge the work of the big firms that are there, and which we have, in fact, we've been doing that over a period of time. It is very, very important, and it also helps the upcoming firms what takes to make a big firm, what is it that is required in terms of working out, because you see, we all think the good design is always going to sell. I've done my job as an architect, but in today's world, an architect is, I don't think, looked at, and I've been talking to people here, there, as the ultimate, because look at the type of projects that we are doing. From a mere 1,000 square meters, we are doing lakhs of square feet now. So, and in that, if you want a good product, you have to have the alignment with all the other professionals, where they become equally important to get a good product. You may be conceiving as an architect a basic, and I think that acknowledgement is talking to people here and there with architects and things like that. It has come across that times have changed now for the architect also, to sort of just think that I can dictate. I am knowledgeable. I am sort of giving a vision. I am giving a holistic aspect to the whole dimension of the product. But project management is equally important, and all the other, I think, managers who are there of the allied services, they play a very, very significant role to sort of get that basic thought, a cohesion, a comprehensiveness, and an elegance in the end product.
Right.
So it's a different ball game, today.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of things have changed. Initially, media was just about covering hard news, and we've been doing soft news, but now it's become a business of design as well, in certain way, where we have to manage the team, we have to manage the resources and everything. We totally agree with that, but how in these times we could still protect the kind of information that we are sharing, which does not only become a sponsored activity, and we are losing out on the kind of content that we really want to see and we really want to read about.
Yeah, and for that, I think it's so important not to forget the basics. You may be talking about the other aspects that are involved for marketing, etc., etc. But so far as you can stick to the basics that are there in the profession, and you can translate that in the publication, I think the day is made. You may then sort of wear any kind of a formal dress. You can get away with it, but if your basics are right, in the publication, I think that is the best way to evolve, rather than just look at the cosmetic first and then try to sort of formulate yourself into that. So I think it's like wearing comfortable clothes as per your body. If your body is good, basically, and any body is good, basically, So how you attune yourself, the comfort levels, I think that is very, very important. That if you know, then that there again you come back to the focus. Then that where do you want to focus? Because today's world is very demanding, as you rightly said. It is, and for sustenance, whether you are in print or you are online, it's a tough experience. Forget the lockdown aspect, but otherwise. Also. You see, and the lockdown, of course, is brought in a little bit more of a turmoil for everybody, but that is for everybody. But otherwise, also competitiveness, and but I think more the merrier. And that entrepreneur's spirit to dirty your hands, irrespective. I think that needs to come back a little bit more and not take it for granted, which the lockdown has done now. Everybody has been reflecting. And this is another channel that you have during, I presume, during this phase that you have evolved this the channel as such to sort of have these kind of chirps, which actually somewhere down the line help everybody,
Exactly. I agree. Okay. So we have some questions, though most of them I'm sure that we would have answered during our discussion. But I have a couple of questions which I've received from certain architects and designers, which, I would like you to answer, right? The first question we received from architect Equin Noel, principal architect at ANDC. His question is that how does an editor select what is good architecture and what is not? Do they always focus on good looks or aesthetics?
I think it's a combination of everything, and that's what I believe you got to look at it holistically. You see, and over a period of time, earlier on, one used to sort of really struggle a little bit as to decision making. That how do you rate a project? But I think over a period of time, with exposure, and that's why I said you got to be an explorer, whether an architect or otherwise, or doing anything, with a keen eye. With experience, you sort of then start looking at a particular kind of a project simultaneously, trying to see the design, trying to see the aesthetics of the thing. You also then start looking, material, what is the documentation is very important. The documentation helps us a lot to sort of also evaluate, a particular project, whether we should take it or not take it. So it is so important to have good documentation for any project, and the rest is holistic.
True. Okay, I hope that answers him well. Okay, I have another question which is on a similar line, which is from the founder principal architect of Nanda Green Associates, Chennai, architect Nanda, and she asked that, as an experienced editor of A+D, what do you currently look personally when it comes to, publishing a project, which we have answered. But her second part of the question is that, is it the emotional value of the project, the brief that comes along with it, or is it the digital, presence that it would create is of more value?
I think we lay sort of importance equally, because emotive, if there is no emotion in architecture, would it be architecture really? Even if the best of the software designs, when you find, we talk about Zaha design, that just comes to my mind. That's one. Even there, somewhere down the line, that is so digital. But the form, etc., that sensitivity, I think, has to be used, the digital, as a tool. And it is not really that, because emotion is so important. As I said, the basics are so important. If you have the basics in you, you can get away with murder. But if the basic, when you look at it first shot, you can easily say, oh, no, oh, yes, by and large. You see, and apart from using all tools, it's also your gut. Then that's the privilege which I guess the editor has, to use.
Yeah. Okay. So next question we have from architect of Naveed Designs, AND, architect Naveed Designs, founder and principal architect. His question is, how does architectural media cover projects of new entrepreneurs, young and talented architects, and how do in future they would inspire young talents to continue the good work? Do they have dedicated segments that kind of inspire these people and focus on their works?
Yeah. That's a point we often all have had earlier, to be honest. You see, but we haven't really gone the age wise or something, because experience in good quality architecture is never related to age. You know, say the best of the architects sometimes you find have done quality work only after the age of 60. You know, I'm just saying, by and large. And sometimes at the age of 25, you find somebody who is doing extraordinarily good. You know, he's got the rhythm in his project, and he is addressing so many issues that do need to be addressed. You know, so it's a kind of, and that is why it is the project which is seen. I think rather than looking at it, we did those a few segments encouraging young architects, and we had some issues earlier, young architects issue or enthusiasm or something like that. We had called them different nomenclatures. We did that. But now I think we then thought that why do we have to do that time and again? We, rather than doing that, you look at a project and maybe done by a young man, and most of our projects, in fact, surprisingly, are from the younger lots nowadays. I mean, if you go back into our issues, they are actually diversity. There's so much of diversity. Somebody from Kerala, unknown. Somebody from Odisha who's doing such beautiful work. You know, he's doing vernacular work, and from the roots he's taking out something, you know, which we've never heard of. The techniques, the construction, you know, and then obviously coupled with all this is the aesthetics. You see, because construction technique, etc., the aesthetics that we get using just, you know, the high rise is a very different one, although there are some very good architects now, contemporary ones, who are playing around with high rises also, and with glass also, which is normally a cursed material when it comes to the Indian scenario. Everybody curses, but there's so much of glass yet we see everywhere around us. But it's these techniques which actually bring in the aesthetics, you know. So it can't be the reverse, that you work on the aesthetics when you have that as your goal and then you sort of filter, but it is through these genuineness that things evolve. And I think that's what we see in our projects by and large.
True. Okay. All right. I think we've also answered the question of Kaveri Seth, who's a student in architecture, where she wanted to know that, you know, what are the steps for a beginner to get featured and what are the inspirations for architectural writing. Would you like to elaborate on anything else on this?
But you know, I mean, as I said, you have to have inspirations for architectural writing. I think you have to write for yourself first. That's the first thing. You know, understand your vocabulary, write, read yourself, what you're writing, evolve, curse yourself for having written that, or it could be better. Be your own critic first. And once you have mastered that art, I think, you know, throwing in the bin so many sort of drafts that you write, I think that process is a very, very important process, you know. And because, you know, see, Rome was never built in a day, as we all say. But that is big. Rome is big. We are talking journalism, but that also, if you take it seriously, if you want to hit a mark, you have to really then look at it, start right from the foundations. It's just not that I am a writer and I am going to write. I mean, and then as you write for others, I think the best way is also to write on architecture. This is another dearth that we have in this country, that no one person wants to write about the architecture of the other person. Whether an architect, there's very little architecture. There's very little architectural criticism in our country. You know, I mean, I used to shed tears earlier, but now I take it, okay. But you just have to, otherwise it was very sad at that time that what are we talking here? People talking, they would, expressions of journalism are so different. And criticism doesn't mean that you have to be negative. It's healthy criticism. It's analysis, you know, and taking it to the next level, interpretations, you know, and evolving a newer vocabulary. But I think there lies the lacuna if we start working from there, and it comes from newspapers, as I said. I mean, let's write for whoever is first interested. He doesn't have to impress the architects. You know, he has to go down to the masses. I think our communities require writing more, architectural writing, more than the architects, to be honest. You know, so newspapers, magazines, general magazines, maybe could be one platform for them to start, to make a beginning, you know, and it's accepted 10 times. It's easier, you know, to get accepted also.
Right, right. Okay, so we will take just one last fun question that I received right now during the live, which was from Ritesh Roy, and he asked, Mr. Paul, what is the secret of your energy?
The secret of energy, I mean, that is actually, I mean, wanting to live life, I think, you know, wanting to breathe the life, breathe nature, you know, and if you believe in that, I think it automatically, you want to jump then, you see, you want to explore. You see, I think nature, if you can develop a rapport with nature, a lot of things get sorted out, to be honest, as an individual, no matter what profession you may be in. You see, I mean, you feel at peace somewhere, you know.
Right, right. Thank you, sir, for coming down and sharing these insights with us and with our audience, knowing, you know, a little more about you on our these Insta 40 minutes. Thank you again.
Oh, it's been a pleasure having a chit chat with you, and you yourself are doing such a wonderful job connecting people. So cheers to that. Yeah. And all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.